this is a surprise to just about no one, but Brandon Graham is coming back. Now, I know that there are a lot of people that are very, very excited about the return of Brandon Graham, and he is a wildly popular player, and he is a guy that is revered in Philadelphia. And I'll tell you this, I think Brandon Graham's a great dude, and when it's all like when I look back at my specific fandom, right? And if I look back at the times I've been right about a player, wrong about a player, that I jumped the gun on a player, that maybe I was a little bit too caught up in the moment at the draft about a player, Brandon Graham has largely outperformed all expectations. And you'll go back to when he was drafted, Earl Thomas was on the board. I think it was Schefter. I think they cut to Schefter and they said, well, the Eagles are going to be drafting Earl Thomas, the safety. We're like, okay, cool. We need a safety. Safety would be great. We were still in that point where we were missing B-Doc. And they took Brandon Graham. And we all said, what the hell is this? Talk about overthinking the pick. And boy, were we wrong. Now, Earl Thomas had some things out of his control happen that shortened his career. But Brandon Graham became one of the most beloved athletes in, I would say, the history of Philadelphia sports. And the Eagles put this graphic out, and they were very proud of it, and they should be. BG is back. And that's great. And I think that if Brandon Graham felt like there was still some meat left on the bone, and if Brandon Graham felt like he wasn't done yet, he needed to go out and achieve a few more things. He needed to, I don't know what those things were, but he felt like he wasn't done his playing days yet, then good on him for coming back. You know, there was a time where people really, really hoped that Jason Kelce was going to come out of retirement. And he held firm. Jason Kelce retired, held firm. Did not play for the Eagles last season. Did not get to hoist his second Super Bowl like Brandon Graham did. He stayed retired. Brandon Graham, even as he retired, remember there was the visual of him with the 2 Lombardi trophies on the desk in front of him. He sounded like a guy that wasn't necessarily ready to retire yet. Now, did he feel like he was being pushed out? Did he feel like maybe his family was saying, hey, we really want you to be home. You've had a great career. What better way to go out than with a Super Bowl win? Remember, he had torn his tricep. He retore the tricep in the Super Bowl. He's an incredible cornerstone. You could even make a case, maybe, that Brandon Graham is on like the Mount Rushmore of defensive players in Eagles history. You could certainly make a case. At the very least, he's probably a top 10 all-time defensive player for the Philadelphia Eagles. Here's my issue. And again, I think it's great for Brandon Graham if he wants to come back. I think it's great for the Eagles that they said, yeah, hell yeah, man, come back. Here's the downside, okay? The Eagles shouldn't need Brandon Graham. They shouldn't. The Eagles should not be in desperate need of an edge rusher. The Eagles should not have been in desperate need of an edge rusher when they went out and got Zadarius Smith. And then Zadarius Smith came into town, was impactful, and then said, yeah, I'm out. I still have lots of questions about if there was, extenuating circumstances that led to Zadarius Smith all of a sudden retiring. But still, he leaves, and the Eagles look around and they say, well, the trade options probably aren't that great. Trey Hendrickson is going to cost us an arm and a leg. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to cost a lot of assets. Was his team really willing to trade with him in the first place, or trade him in the first place? And so now you have to go to the retirement group. You have to go back to Brandon Graham, who seemed to have made peace with the decision, or at least did a convincing enough job that a lot of people believed he was ready to be done. And I have a legitimate question about it. I have a legitimate issue with it. Is this an indictment on Howie Roseman for not addressing the position better? Now, Jahad Campbell played linebacker to start the year. And once Nakobe Dean came back, then the thought was, okay, Jahad Campbell maybe can start rushing off the edge, and maybe that helps. Am I opposed to the idea of Brandon Graham working closely with Jahad Campbell? No, I think it would actually be a great thing. Do I want Brandon Graham to be a starter on this team? Not necessarily. Like, if all things go well, I'd like Brandon Graham to be a limited snap guy who's there for his leadership to help this potentially slightly fractured locker room. I would like Brandon Graham to be here and to help with all of the intangibles and all the other things, and maybe help in player development. But do I want or need to see Brandon Graham go out and take like 80% of the snaps or 50%, 60% of the snaps on defense? Probably not. And if Brandon Graham comes in and he is your most impactful edge rusher, then that to me is a legitimate issue. Like, that's a legitimate problem. Now, that's the negative. That's the cynic way to look about it. I will say that it is good that he's back. I will say that, like, in the locker room, he was a very well-liked guy. This was reiterated many times over. But man, when you have to start going back to the retirees, that's where I get worried. I'm not going to draw the direct comparison and the direct parallel, but David Robertson wasn't pitching all season in Major League Baseball. And Dave Dombrowski looked around and said, well, I don't see anything on the trade market right now that looks like a good idea. So how about I go back to David Robertson? He's just kind of hanging out. He's older. He could come in and help us in the playoffs. If we get there, he could help us late in the regular season. Yeah, let's get David Robertson. There's nothing wrong with bringing in mercenary help. And in this case, bringing in a mercenary who is absolutely beloved by the organization. However, we need to be really careful and set some realistic expectations. Now, if Brandon Graham comes out and puts up like 4 sacks over the next 8 weeks, then we say, hell yeah, great signing, great job coming back. Here's the problem though. Brandon Graham had the perfect opportunity to walk away from it all, hoisting the second Lombardi trophy of his career and the second Lombardi trophy in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. He went out in like the most perfect way, a Super Bowl win. If it doesn't happen this year, if the Eagles don't hoist the Lombardi trophy, is he going to now feel the itch to come back and try to go out again with a Lombardi? Is this going to turn into Brandon Graham doesn't know when to hang it up? Is this going to become Brandon Graham becomes the defensive version of Jason Peters? I don't think so. I think he has a much better concept of what he can and can't do. But it does make me a little bit nervous. I don't know of a time, somebody could let me know in the comments. I can't think of a time when a guy had that perfect send-off and then backed out of it and then was able to retire at the same or near the same kind of peak. I don't know if it's happened before.